The Galactic Council had watched humanity for exactly 300 years. They had seen the small blue planet go from primitive nuclear weapons to faster-than-light travel. They had watched humans spread across their solar system like ants building new homes. And when humanity finally reached the stars, the Council had made a decision that would change everything. They would test these newcomers. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the UES Perseverance, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the stars streak past the observation window. The ship hummed with quiet power, carrying 2,000 souls through the darkness between worlds. They were 3 days out from the colony on New Shanghai when the attack came. "Admiral, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace," Lieutenant Park called out, his voice tight with controlled fear. 17 ships. They are not responding to our hails." Chen Wei turned to face the tactical display. The enemy vessels surrounded them in a perfect sphere, cutting off every escape route. Their hulls were black and angular, covered in weapons that glowed with an angry red light. "The Kravik Dominion," Chen Wei said softly. Everyone on the bridge knew the name. The Kravik were slavers and conquerors. They had been raiding frontier colonies for months, taking humans and selling them to the highest bidder across the galaxy. "They are hailing us now, Admiral," the communications officer said. "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and a face appeared that made several bridge officers step back in shock. The Kravik commander was massive, his gray skin covered in ritual scars. 2 sets of yellow eyes blinked at the camera, and when he spoke, his voice was like rocks grinding together. "Human vessel, you will surrender. Your people will serve the Dominion. Resist, and we will destroy you and take what remains. You have 1 minute to decide." Chen Wei looked at her crew. Young faces, old faces, scared faces, angry faces. 2,000 people depending on her choice. She thought about the colonies that had already fallen, the families torn apart, the children sold into slavery. "Kravik Commander," she said, her voice steady and clear. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of the United Earth ship Perseverance. I have a counteroffer." The alien leaned forward, curiosity mixing with amusement in his eyes. "You are in no position to offer anything human. You surrender to us, right now. You will be treated fairly, given food and shelter, and eventually return to your people. No harm will come to you if you lay down your weapons." The Kravik laughed. It was an ugly sound like metal scraping against metal. "You threaten us, 1 ship against 17. Your species truly is as foolish as the Council said." "This is not a threat," Chen Wei said. "This is mercy, the only mercy you will receive. If you continue this attack, if you refuse to surrender, then you will face human justice. And I promise you, Commander, you do not want that." The Kravik ended the transmission. On the tactical display, the enemy ships began to move, their weapons charging to full power. "All hands battle stations," Chen Wei ordered. "Signal the fleet." Far away, hidden in the shadow of a nearby moon, 12 human warships received the signal and began to move. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The Kravik had expected an easy victory against a single transport ship. They had not expected the Perseverance to be a trap. They had not expected the hidden fleet to strike from behind. And they had certainly not expected human weapons technology to be so far advanced beyond their own. 8 Kravik ships were destroyed in the first salvo. 5 more fell in the second. The remaining 4 tried to flee, their hyperdrive spinning up for an emergency jump. "Admiral, 4 ships attempting to escape," Lieutenant Park reported. "Disable their drives, do not destroy them." The human ships were faster, their weapons more precise. Within moments, the 4 Kravik vessels drifted helplessly in space, their engines dead and their weapons offline. Chen Wei opened a channel to all surviving Kravik ships. "This is Admiral Chen Wei. Your fleet is destroyed. Your weapons are disabled. You have 2 choices. Surrender now and be treated with mercy, or continue to resist and face justice. You have 30 seconds. On the Kravik flagship, Commander Throck stared at the displays in disbelief. His fleet, the pride of the Dominion, had been shattered in less than 5 minutes. His ship was crippled, his weapons cold, his crew looking to him for guidance. "Commander," his second said quietly, "what do we do?" Throck thought about his options. He thought about the human admiral's words: mercy for those who surrender, justice for those who resist. He had heard stories about human justice, whispered tales from the few survivors of previous encounters. The humans did not torture. They did not enslave, but they did not forget either. "Signal our surrender," Throck said finally. The words tasted like ash in his mouth, but he said them. "All ships stand down." On the other 3 crippled vessels, the commanders made their choices. 2 followed Throck's lead and signaled their surrender. The third did not. Commander Vex had been a slaver for 40 years. He had taken thousands of beings from dozens of species and sold them all. He had never surrendered in his life, and he was not about to start now. "Reroute all power to weapons," he snarled at his crew. "Target the nearest human vessel. We will take them with us." His crew hesitated. They had seen what human weapons could do, but Vex was their commander, and his rage was terrible to behold. "Do it." The Kravik ship's weapons came online, stuttering and weak but still dangerous. They fired at the closest human destroyer, scoring a hit against its shields. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Chen Wei watched as the defiant Kravik ship was torn apart by concentrated fire from 3 human vessels. It took less than 10 seconds. There were no survivors. "Record that," she said quietly. "Let it be known throughout the galaxy. We offered mercy. They chose justice." The 3 remaining Kravik commanders watched the destruction of their comrade's ship in silence. They had made the right choice. Surrender was not shameful when the alternative was annihilation. Human shuttles began to cross the void between ships, carrying armed Marines in powered armor. The Kravik crews were taken into custody one by one, searched for weapons, and then given food and water. None were harmed. None were mistreated. Commander Throck found himself sitting in a clean cell with a soft bed and warm blankets. A human medic treated the wounds he had received during the battle. The food they gave him was strange but filling. "Why?" he asked the guard who brought his evening meal. "Why do you treat us like this? We came to enslave your people." The guard, a young woman with kind eyes, set down the tray and considered the question. "Because that is who we are," she said simply. "You surrendered. You stopped fighting. That makes you a prisoner, not an enemy, and prisoners deserve to be treated with dignity. But your people that we took, the colonies we raided, they will be rescued," the guard said, "and those who harmed them will face justice. But you surrendered. You will face a trial, yes, but you will not be tortured. You will not be executed without cause. You made a choice, and we will honor that choice." Throck did not understand. In the Dominion, prisoners were tools to be used and discarded. The concept of mercy for a defeated enemy was foreign to everything he knew. But as the days passed, as he watched the humans treat his crew with fairness and respect, something began to change in the old commander's heart. Something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Kravik Dominion had sent a fleet to capture human slaves. The humans had destroyed most of it and captured the rest. The survivors had been treated with mercy, while those who refused to surrender had been eliminated without hesitation. The Galactic Council received the news in their great chamber on the station at the center of known space. 12 species sat in judgment over the affairs of thousands of worlds, and they had been watching humanity very carefully. "This changes things," said Counselor Zeth, a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes. "The humans have shown both strength and restraint. That is a rare combination." "They are still primitives," argued Counselor Emrak, a squat creature covered in thick scales. A few centuries of space travel does not make them our equals. The Kravik merely underestimated them. Did they? Zeth asked. The Kravik had 17 warships. The humans had 13, one of which was a transport, and yet the humans won decisively with no losses of their own. Their technology is advancing faster than any species we have ever documented. The chamber fell silent as the counselors considered this. Humanity had been in space for less than 100 years. In that time, they had gone from primitive rockets to weapons that could match the Dominion's finest. What would they be capable of in another 100 years? Another 1,000? We should crush them now, Counselor Emrak said, before they become a threat. And if we fail, another counselor asked. The Kravik thought the same thing. Look what happened to them. The debate continued for hours, but in the end, no decision was made. The council would continue to watch. They would continue to wait. And they would hope that when the time came, humanity would show them the same mercy they had shown the Kravik. Admiral Chen Wei knew nothing of the council's deliberations. She was too busy dealing with the aftermath of the battle. The rescued Kravik prisoners needed to be transported to a proper detention facility. The damaged ships needed repairs, and reports had to be filed with Earth Command. But before any of that, there was one more task that demanded her attention. The colony on New Shanghai had been raided 6 months ago. 300 of its people had been taken by the Kravik. According to the data recovered from the captured ships, those people had been sold to various buyers across the galaxy. Chen Wei sat in her quarters, reading through the list of names. Families torn apart, children separated from parents, elderly couples who had survived Earth's darkest days only to be enslaved by aliens. "We will find you," she said quietly, her finger tracing down the list. "Every single one of you, and we will bring you home." It was a promise that would take years to fulfill, but humanity had made a choice when they first reached the stars. They would never leave their own behind. They would never stop searching, and they would never forget. The slave traders of the galaxy were about to learn what human justice really meant. 6 months after the battle with the Kravik fleet, a small human freighter landed on the trading station called Nexus Prime. It was a dirty, crowded place where 1,000 species came to buy and sell everything from rare minerals to living beings. The station masters did not care what was traded, only that they received their percentage. Captain Maria Santos stepped off her ship and into the chaos of the main marketplace. She wore plain clothes and carried no visible weapons, looking like just another trader come to make a deal. But hidden beneath her jacket was a slim pistol, and in her ear was a communication device linking her to her crew and beyond them, to a task force of human warships waiting just outside the system. "I have eyes on the target," she said quietly. "Building 7, 3rd level, just like the intelligence said." "Confirmed," came the reply. "Proceed with caution. Remember, we want them alive if possible." Santos made her way through the crowds, past vendors selling exotic foods and criminals offering stolen goods. She climbed a set of stairs and found herself in a quieter section of the station, where the truly valuable merchandise was kept away from prying eyes. Building 7 was a fortress disguised as a warehouse. Armed guards stood at every entrance, and security cameras covered every angle, but Santos had something the guards did not expect. She walked up to the main entrance and smiled at the 2 massive beings blocking her path. They were thorax, a species known for their strength and their willingness to work for anyone who paid well. "I am here to see Merchant Lord Kilos," she said. "I have a business proposition." The guards looked at each other, then back at her. "The Merchant Lord does not see humans. Go away." "Tell him I have information about the Kravik survivors. Tell him I know where the human fleet is waiting. I think he will want to hear what I have to say." One guard stayed at the door while the other disappeared inside. Santos waited, her heart beating steadily, her mind running through the mission parameters one more time. This was the moment where everything could go wrong. The guard returned and gestured for her to follow. "The merchant lord will see you, but if this is a trick, human, you will die screaming." "I understand," Santos said, and she meant it. She knew the risks, but she also knew what waited inside that building. 23 humans from New Shanghai, including 4 children, being held for auction. The merchant lord's chamber was decorated with the wealth of 100 worlds. Precious metals lined the walls, and rare gems sparkled from display cases. But the most valuable merchandise was kept in cages at the back of the room. Santos forced herself not to look at the prisoners. Not yet. First she had to deal with Kilos. The merchant lord was a Velith, a species that resembled Earth's octopuses, but with a cruel intelligence in their many eyes. He lounged on a throne of polished bone, watching Santos approach with obvious amusement. "A human," he said, his voice wet and gurgling. "How delightful. I have heard your species fetches excellent prices. Perhaps I should add you to my inventory." "I have more value as a partner than as merchandise," Santos replied, keeping her voice steady. "I know things that could make you very rich." "Then speak." Santos began to talk, spinning a tale of betrayal and greed that she had practiced 100 times. She spoke of human fleet movements, of defensive weaknesses, of colonies ripe for raiding. She watched Kilos lean forward with interest, his many tentacles writhing with anticipation. And while she talked, her crew was moving. Lieutenant James Chen led a team of 8 Marines through the maintenance tunnels beneath Building 7. They had accessed the station's service systems through a bribed worker, and now they moved silently toward their objectives. "Team 2 in position," whispered another voice in Santos' ear, "ready to cut power on your signal. Team 3 has the guards on the east entrance, waiting for go." Santos kept talking, drawing out her story, giving her people time. Kilos was so focused on the promise of profit that he never noticed the slight tremor in the floor as the Marine teams took their positions. "This is fascinating," Kilos said finally. "But I must ask, human, why would you betray your own kind? What do you want in return?" Santos smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I want you to know something, Merchant Lord. Before this is over, I want you to understand exactly why this is happening." Kilos's many eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "You have 23 of my people in those cages. You took them from their homes, from their families. You were going to sell them like animals." The merchant lord's expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "Guards." "Now," Santos said calmly. The lights went out. The sound of gunfire echoed through the building. Santos drew her weapon and fired at Kilos in one smooth motion, the stun bolt catching him square in his central mass. The battle for Building 7 lasted less than 3 minutes. The human Marines were precise and professional, taking down guards with non-lethal weapons when possible and lethal force when necessary. By the time the emergency lights came on, it was over. Santos stood over the unconscious form of the merchant lord, her weapon still trained on his body. Around her, her team was opening the cages, releasing the human prisoners who stared at their rescuers with disbelief and hope. "It's okay," she told them. "You're going home." A little girl no more than 6 years old ran to Santos and wrapped her arms around her legs. "Are you really here? Is this real?" Santos knelt down and hugged the child. "It's real, sweetheart. We came to bring you home. We will always come for you." Outside, the human warships had moved into the system. Their presence sent a clear message to the station masters and everyone else watching. This was not a raid. This was a rescue mission, and anyone who tried to interfere would face the consequences. The merchant lord was taken into custody along with his guards and associates. They would face trial for their crimes against humanity. The evidence was overwhelming, and the sentence would be severe. But they would receive fair treatment, proper legal representation, and the chance to speak in their own defense. It was more than they had ever given their victims. On the station, word spread quickly. The humans had come for their own. They had struck with precision and efficiency, sparing those who did not resist and showing no mercy to those who did. And now they were gone, leaving behind a warning that every slave trader in the galaxy would hear. If you take our people, we will find you. If you surrender, you will receive mercy. If you resist, you will receive justice. The choice was theirs to make. The rescue from Nexus Prime was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, human task forces conducted dozens of similar operations across the galaxy. They tracked down every human taken from every raided colony, following trails that led through the darkest corners of known space. Some slave traders surrendered the moment human ships appeared. They had heard the stories. They knew that cooperation meant survival. These traders were arrested, their human captives freed, and they were transported to Earth for trial. Others chose to fight. They believed that their hideouts were impregnable, that their allies would protect them, that humanity could not possibly find them all. They were wrong. The human military developed new tactics and technologies specifically for rescue operations. They built ships that could appear from nowhere, strike with devastating precision, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. They trained special forces who could infiltrate any facility and extract prisoners without harm. And they created a database of every slave trader, every buyer, every facilitator who had ever touched a human captive. The database grew larger every day, fed by interrogations, recovered data, and intelligence from species who had decided that cooperating with humanity was safer than opposing them. Commander Throck, the Kravik who had surrendered at the first battle, watched all of this from his cell on Earth. He had been tried and convicted of piracy and related crimes, sentenced to 30 years in a rehabilitation facility. The sentence was harsh but fair, and the facility itself was nothing like the prisons of the Dominion. He had a clean room, adequate food, access to education and exercise. He was allowed visitors and could communicate with the outside world within certain limits. Some of his fellow prisoners had even begun to attend human schools through remote learning programs. "Why do you do this?" Throck asked his assigned counselor, a human woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez. "We came to enslave your people. We would have killed any who resisted. And yet you treat us like this. I do not understand." Dr. Vasquez considered the question carefully before answering. "Do you know the history of my species, Commander?" "Some, you are young among the stars, but old on your world. You have fought many wars among yourselves." "Yes, terrible wars. We have committed horrible atrocities against each other throughout our history. Genocide, slavery, torture. We have done all of these things to our own kind." Throck tilted his head in confusion. "Then how can you claim to be merciful? How can you speak of justice?" "Because we learned," Dr. Vasquez said simply. "It took us thousands of years, millions of deaths, and countless tragedies. But we learned that mercy does not mean weakness. We learned that justice does not mean revenge. We learned that treating our enemies with dignity does not diminish us. It elevates us. And if we do not learn, if we continue to raid and enslave once we are released, then you will face justice again, and again, and again, for as long as it takes." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her eyes meeting Throck's. "But we will never stop offering you the chance to choose differently. We will never stop believing that you can be better than you were. That is the human way." Throck thought about her words for a long time after she left. He thought about his life, the things he had done, the beings he had harmed. He thought about the young human guard who had first shown him kindness, the medic who had treated his wounds, the counselor who spoke to him as an equal. And for the first time since his capture, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, change was possible. News of the human rescue operations eventually reached the Galactic Council. They had been monitoring humanity's activities with growing concern, watching as the young species systematically dismantled slave trading networks that had operated for centuries. "They are disrupting the balance of power," Counselor Emrak complained during one session. "The slave trade is an economic foundation for dozens of species. By attacking it, the humans are destabilizing entire regions of space." "The slave trade is barbaric," Counselor Zeth replied. "It should have been abolished long ago. We only tolerated it because no one was willing to bear the cost of ending it. The humans are willing." "At what price? They are making enemies of every species that profits from the trade. They cannot fight them all." "Can they not?" Zeth pulled up a display showing human military expansion over the past 2 years. "Their fleet has tripled in size. Their technology continues to advance at unprecedented rates, and their people are united in this cause like nothing we have ever seen. Every attack against them only strengthens their resolve." The council debated for hours, but the conclusion was inescapable. Humanity could not be stopped by force. Any species that tried would face the same fate as the Kravik. The only options were to accept the new reality, or to find a way to coexist with these strange, contradictory beings who offered mercy with one hand and justice with the other. In the end, the council made a historic decision. They would formally invite humanity to join their ranks. They would recognize the human colonies as sovereign territory, and they would support humanity's efforts to end the slave trade, providing resources and intelligence to help locate and free captives of all species. It was not pure altruism. The council understood that having humanity as an ally was far better than having them as an enemy, but it was a beginning, a foundation for something new. Admiral Chen Wei received the news of the council's decision while overseeing the construction of a new class of rescue ship. She read the message twice, then set it aside and returned to her work. "Admiral," her aide said, "this is historic. We are joining the Galactic Council. Should we not celebrate?" "We can celebrate when every one of our people is home," Chen Wei replied. "We can celebrate when no human child is ever sold into slavery again. Until then, we have work to do." The aide nodded and handed her the next report. There were still hundreds of humans unaccounted for, scattered across the galaxy in hidden locations. Finding them would take years, perhaps decades, but humanity had made a promise. They would never stop searching. They would never leave their own behind, and they would show mercy to those who helped them and justice to those who stood in their way. The stars had never seen anything like humanity before. They were young and reckless, kind and ruthless, merciful and just. They were a contradiction wrapped in an enigma, a species that could destroy an enemy fleet in minutes and then treat the survivors with dignity and respect. The galaxy did not know what to make of them, but one thing was becoming clear to everyone watching. The age of humanity had begun. 10 years had passed since the first battle with the Kravik. In that time, humanity had transformed from a newcomer on the galactic stage to a major power. They had joined the Galactic Council, their representatives sitting among the 12 who decided the fate of thousands of worlds. They had built a fleet that rivaled any other species, and they had kept their promise. Every human taken by slavers had been found and brought home, every single one. The last rescue had taken place just 3 months ago, recovering an elderly man who had been held captive on a distant moon for almost 8 years. He had wept when he saw the human marines, and he had wept again when his feet touched Earth soil. The slave trade still existed, but it was dying. No one dared touch humans anymore, and the networks that had once dealt in human merchandise had been systematically destroyed. Other species were beginning to benefit from humanity's crusade as well, as the task forces often freed non-human captives during their operations. Commander Throck had been released from the rehabilitation facility 2 years earlier, his sentence reduced for good behavior and genuine reform. He had returned to the Dominion briefly, but found that he no longer fit in there. The cruelty and brutality that had once been his daily life now sickened him. So he had done something that shocked everyone who knew him. He had applied for a position with the Human Rescue Forces. "You understand what you are asking," Admiral Chen Wei said during his interview. "You would be working to free the same beings you once enslaved. Many of your colleagues will be humans who lost family members to Kravik raids." Throck met her gaze without flinching. "I understand, Admiral. I cannot undo the harm I caused. I cannot bring back those who died because of my actions, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to prevent others from suffering the same fate." Chen Wei studied him for a long moment. She saw the scars of his past, the weight of his guilt, and something else. Something that had not been there when he first surrendered 10 years ago. "Dr. Vasquez believes you are sincere," she said finally. "She believes you have genuinely changed." "With respect, Admiral, it does not matter what Dr. Vasquez believes. It only matters what I do. Judge me by my actions, not my words." Chen Wei almost smiled. "That is a very human thing to say, Commander." She approved his application. Throck began training the next day, learning human tactics and protocols, working alongside the very people his kind had once terrorized. It was not easy. Some refused to work with him. Others looked at him with barely concealed hatred. But there were also those who saw what he was trying to do and respected him for it. Slowly, over time, he began to earn their trust. His first mission came 6 months later. A group of Velith slavers had been identified operating near the border of Council space. They were holding captives from 3 different species, including a dozen humans taken from a research outpost. Throck served as a tactical advisor, using his knowledge of slaver operations to help plan the assault. When the time came, he went in with the first wave, risking his life alongside the humans who had once been his enemies. The mission was a success. The slavers were captured, the captives freed, and no one on the rescue team was killed. Throck personally carried a wounded human marine to the extraction point, refusing to leave him behind even when enemy fire came dangerously close. "Why did you do that?" the marine asked later from his bed in the medical bay. "You could have been killed." Throck thought about how to answer. He thought about Dr. Vasquez and her lessons about mercy and justice. He thought about the young guard who had first shown him kindness all those years ago. "Because that is who I want to be now," he said finally. "You humans taught me that it is never too late to choose differently. I am trying to make better choices." The Marine looked at him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Commander." Throck took his hand and shook it. It was a human gesture, one he had learned during his time in the rehabilitation facility. But it meant more to him now than any honor he had ever received in the Dominion. It meant belonging, it meant acceptance, it meant hope. The Galactic Council convened for its annual session, and for the first time, the human representative held the rotating chair. Ambassador James Chen, son of the Marine who had led the first assault on Building 7 all those years ago, called the assembly to order. "We have much to discuss," he said, "but before we begin, I want to acknowledge a milestone. This week marks 10 years since the first battle between humanity and the Kravik Dominion, 10 years since we entered the wider galactic community, and 10 years since we made a promise to ourselves and to all who would listen." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of 100 species. "We promised that we would show mercy to those who surrender and justice to those who resist. We have kept that promise. But today, I want to propose something more, something that reflects what we have learned in our time among you." The chamber was silent, waiting. "The slave trade has been dying, but it is not dead. Beings of many species still suffer in bondage across this galaxy. Humanity cannot end this alone, but together, as a council, we can. I propose that we establish a joint task force, drawing from all member species, dedicated to the complete abolition of slavery in council space." The debate that followed was heated. Some species had economic interests tied to the trade. Others feared the cost of enforcement. But in the end, the vote was overwhelming. The Galactic Anti-Slavery Task Force was established that day, with human Admiral Chen Wei as its first commander. Throck was appointed as her chief advisor on slaver tactics. Representatives from dozens of species volunteered to serve. "This is a great day," Counselor Zeth said as the session ended. "A day that would have seemed impossible just 10 years ago. How did you do it? How did you change so much so quickly?" Ambassador Chen smiled. "We did not change the galaxy, Counselor. We just reminded it of something it had forgotten, that mercy and justice are not opposites. They are partners, and together they are stronger than any force of cruelty or fear." On Earth, in the Memorial Garden outside the Unified Command headquarters, the last human former slave was laying flowers at a monument. The stone was carved with thousands of names, every human who had been taken during the raiding years. Next to each name was a small symbol, a tiny star that glowed with warm light. Every star was lit, every name accounted for, every person found. The old man stood there for a long time, remembering the years of captivity, the despair, the moment when he had given up hope. And then the moment when human Marines had burst through the door, when he had seen the flag on their armor, when he had heard the words that had seemed impossible. "We came to bring you home." He touched the stone, feeling the warmth of the glowing stars against his fingers. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for not forgetting. Thank you for never giving up." A young woman approached him, wearing the uniform of the Galactic Anti-Slavery Task Force. She had been born after the raids ended, part of a generation that had never known the fear of slavers in the night. But she carried the memory of those who had suffered, and she wore their courage like armor. "Sir," she said gently, "the ceremony is about to begin. Would you like me to walk with you?" The old man nodded, wiping his eyes. "Yes, yes, I would like that." Together, they walked toward the gathering crowd. Thousands of people had come to mark the anniversary, humans and aliens alike. They came to remember the fallen, to honor the survivors, and to celebrate the promise that had been kept. Admiral Chen Wei stood at the podium, her hair now streaked with gray but her eyes as sharp as ever. She looked out at the crowd and felt the weight of all those years pressing down on her shoulders. So many battles, so many losses, so many hard choices. But also so many victories, so many rescues, so many lives saved. 10 years ago, she began, we faced a choice. We could have responded to the attacks on our colonies with blind vengeance. We could have become the very thing we were fighting against. But we chose a different path. We chose mercy for those who laid down their arms. We chose justice for those who refused. And we chose to never, ever give up on our own. She paused, her gaze finding the old man in the crowd. Today, every name on that memorial is accounted for. Every person who was taken has been brought home, or their fate has been recorded so that their families can find peace. We kept our promise, and now we make a new one. She raised her voice, letting it carry across the garden and beyond, to the cameras broadcasting her words across the galaxy. We will extend to others the same hope we gave ourselves. We will fight for every being held in bondage, regardless of species. We will show mercy to those who choose to change, and we will bring justice to those who do not. This is not just the human way anymore. It is the way of the Galactic Council. It is the way of the future. The crowd erupted in cheers. Humans embraced aliens. Former enemies shook hands. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, Commander Throck stood watching, tears streaming down his scarred face. He had been given mercy when he surrendered. He had been given the chance to change. And now he was part of something greater than himself, something that would endure long after he was gone. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not just strength, though they had plenty of that. Not just technology, though theirs was impressive, but hope. The belief that anyone could be redeemed, the faith that mercy and justice could walk hand in hand. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a ship bearing the flag of Earth, a new rescue team was preparing for a mission. They were human and alien now, working together, united by a common purpose. They would face danger and hardship. Some of them might not come back. But they would never stop, they would never give up, and they would never forget. Because that was the human way: mercy for those who surrender, justice for those who resist, and hope, always hope for a better tomorrow. The stars had finally found a species worthy of their light. And humanity was just getting started.